time been revolutionizing how companies service their customers and clients, especially in products, services, and information support. Yeah, it basically involves a company based in say Australia, but the people handling the phone inquiries don't quite belong to the company. They're usually outsourced, so they're either somewhere in Australia, not in the company that you've called. They're somewhere in Australia, or more often than not, outside Australia, because the same job can be done more cheaply outside the country. Now, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of call centers which take our calls from Australia, and these call centers are based in places like India and the Philippines, even the Pacific. Here's how a CEO at the ANZ Bank described why a Fiji-based call center worked for the company.
It ticks the boxes because we've got access to a whole bunch of talented youngsters that come from the University of South Pacific. Not only does it do what call centres do in terms of customer inquiries, it actually does processing for our customers across the whole of the Pacific. So if I give you an example, we could have a customer from Papua New Guinea who's on holiday in say, Australia. They've lost their credit card. The Fiji operator would actually then take the call, and in that case would block the credit card, would then order a new credit card, and hopefully within 24 hours would give a new credit card to the person in Australia.
Thank you. One moment, please.
So there you go. That's just a sense of how one of those call centers works, okay? And this call center juggernaut continues to change how businesses are conducted. But there's a growing trend, well, a small trend, for some companies to bring these call centers back to home country, or at least where the businesses are based. To find out why and what this might mean, I'm turning to Tania Iezzi, who's director of Percepta, which is a company which creates and manages those in-house call centers in Australia. Tania, welcome.
Thank you, Clement.
You might need to move just a little bit closer to the microphone. Now, is this a trend, call centers coming back to Australia?
Certainly, if you read media stories, it seems to suggest that companies are seriously looking at relocating their call centres back to Australia. Mm-hmm. The reality is when and how this is going to happen, I don't know. And certainly there are going to be some cost implications of relocating because, as you said, running it from an offshore location somewhere in Asia Pacific is typically a lot cheaper than if you were to run it from Australia.
But you're doing this for a number of companies, car companies here in Australia. What is it that brought them to you, took them to you? I mean, what did they explain? Were there needs that
Absolutely, thank you. Typically, the type of activity that we are involved in is around the customer loyalty cycle. So it is typically quite a complex interaction. A lot of the activity that's outsourced or offshored, and that's where you're running it from Asian Pacific countries, is either once-off activity or administration type activity. So it's easy to outsource, easy to have it run from a different location. What we do is...
Okay, I want to illustrate that. Okay, that's an example of I'm setting up an account doing something, or I've bought a new piece of equipment that should be doing something, so I call you for a one-off call and the person explains it somewhere in some other country.
Could be an account balance.
It's resolved and that's done.
Absolutely.
You're talking about something different here.
Correct. So ours could be quite a complex interaction where it isn't resolved on one call and may involve a number of different parties. And in my experience, the clients that we've spoken to have typically said that they feel disconnected from their customers. They don't know what the key issues are, and trying to understand their customers better has brought them to us to talk to us about what we can offer, which is setting up on their site. So they don't have, I'll use the word headache, of running the call centre themselves and doing all the recruitment and the performance management. We will do all of that, but we will set up on their site.
Right. I think over here at the ABC we had something similar where there was a company within the large organisation which handled our technical stuff, and that's the way it worked. Now, had these companies, before they came to you, did they have their call centres overseas?
No, not overseas, but some of them have had, and if I can use the terminology, outsourced, which is where what we do as Percepta, we are a service provider. And we offer the option where a customer or a client can set up on our site and we will run their business from our corporate location. Or we will set up on their site, which the technical term is insourcing. That's what we will do.
Oh, okay. So I get a sense of it. Now, what was happening as a result, though? Because I'm sure you have some figures and stats. I'm sure these people have come to you with what wasn't working out for them. Were there high costs involved, or were there reasonable costs involved with not quite having it in-house or closer nearby?
I think the biggest issue that we've heard from most of the customers that we have talked to is this feeling of being disconnected from their customer base.
But then how does that manifest, though? Because the bottom line is always the dollar, isn't it? Somehow it would have been manifest in cost, or are we talking goodwill here?
We're talking about goodwill, understanding key issues. If you appreciate that a vehicle, it can be quite complex. So the issues, the number of things that can go wrong, there are varied, and there are multiple reasons why things will go wrong.
Yeah.
Understanding how the customer is experiencing their product is something that they didn't feel they were getting when it was set up on a site that was removed from their site.
Okay.
So with our clients, they can actually walk into the call centre. They can put on a headset, they can actually listen to what their customers are saying about them and their experience in their product, and that helps them feel a little bit more connected and gets them to feel like they understand better what the customer's key issues are.
So I'm wondering whether this will change still, proportionately, whether this will change things in the industry. Is there kind of a trend happening where there are more companies turning to you to do the job for them?
Certainly we're talking to a lot of potential customers about the opportunity of setting up on their site. The value of the customer is key, and we've all heard the stories about it takes 10 times more to attract a new customer than it is to keep an existing one. And this is where the economic challenges for clients and brands is going to mean that they need to retain the ones that they've currently got. And it's about offering them goodwill, treating them, making them feel important. And that is what's going to retain that customer within their cycle.
These are things that are valued quite often by high-end companies. Companies with, this is, an assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that sort of service is, usually expected from companies for whom you've paid a lot of, products. You've paid lots of money.
And it's interesting you say that it's expected.
Yeah.
It may be expected from the client, but it's not always given. And it's about making sure that a brand is giving a service that a customer expects. And again, as consumers, you and I both know that we probably have greater expectations. And when things go wrong, there's a lot more opportunity for everybody to find out about it through Twitter, Facebook, social media, blogs. So it really is going to be important for a brand to make sure that they are monitoring what their customers are saying about them. Again, I'm sure you and I, if we've done research for potentially a restaurant that we want to eat in or a hotel we want to stay in, we will go online to see what people are saying about that brand. And we probably made some decisions where we walked away from that hotel or that restaurant, and I know I have, because of what customers have said about their experience. And this is what we deal with, making sure that the customer is saying positive things about the brand that we represent.
And that is increasingly the case, especially with online, sites, giving customers a chance to talk about these things.
Absolutely. And another interesting reason that was given by one of our clients, our existing client, is that they felt that every time they were talking to an outsourcer, so set up away from their location, every time they rang, they were talking to someone different. And this particular client has said, since we've been involved and we've set up on their site, we have had people have stayed in the job for a lot longer, and we're providing a constant service. So the customer's calling back a few times potentially is actually speaking to the same person, and that's important in managing that customer relationship.
And Tania Iezzi, just in wrapping up, there's always the competition.
Yes.
From overseas, there's always the search for the cheaper option, especially overseas. Do you see others encroaching? I mean, do you see competition out there? Do you have to be on your feet all the time with the business that you do here in Australia?
Absolutely. We're constantly being challenged by overseas pressures, but we like to think that what we offer is quite flexible. So we don't offer a one-size-fits-all to our clients. We want to talk to them. We want to understand what their business pressures are, and we want to be able to work with them to find those solutions that suit them. And I think in a way that's what sets us apart. And also the fact that we're willing to set up on a client site is something that a lot of companies haven't been willing to do.
And, well, let's see. We might be seeing more of it. Tania Iezzi, really appreciate you coming into Radio Australia and the ABC. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Tania Iezzi, who's the director of Percepta, which is a company here which creates and manages in-house call centres in Australia. You are listening to Radio Australia across Asia and the Pacific. I'm Clement Paligar. Really nice to have your company. In a moment, we'll find out about this, world record that's been broken.